The man who wrote in his journal every single day about Barbra Streisand is now writing the hardest entries of his life. James Brolin, who asked her to marry him 3 times before she said yes, recently told movie producers he can't take on new jobs right now. Their money, which they always kept separate, is finally being put together to pay for expensive medical bills. After celebrating 25 years of marriage last year, Brad said she'd done pretty much. This famous couple now faces their biggest challenge ever. Hollywood friends say Brolin turned down a $2 million 0 cents movie role just to stay home with his wife. This is the story of two people who found love later in life and built something beautiful together. Now they're facing the hardest test of their marriage. James Brolin was born as Craig Kenneth Bruderly on July 18, 1940, on one of the hottest days ever recorded in Los Angeles. His dad, Henry, was a builder who ran their house like a strict business. His mom, Helen, used to work in movies as an extra, but she never told Craig about it. Craig was a quiet kid, partly because he had really bad asthma. When he was 7, he had to stay in the hospital for 45 days. But Craig was very smart. At age 9, he took apart his dad's watch and put it back together perfectly. When Craig was 15, he saw the movie East of Eden, and it changed his whole life. So the quote that Joe saw in the movie, every Saturday for 6 months, he secretly rode his bike 17 miles to a park. There, all alone, he would copy the way James Dean walked, talked, and looked. When James Dean died in a car crash, Craig was so upset he didn't talk to anyone for 11 days. In 1960, the movie studio told Craig he had to change his name. They said Bruderlin sounded too German. Craig didn't want to change it, but the studio won. They gave him the name James because of his love for James Dean. His dad was so angry he didn't talk to him for over a year. In 1966, Brolin got small parts on the Batman TV show. He was homeless at the time, living in a 1958 Chevy car and using the gym showers at the movie studio. In 1967, everything went wrong. He starred in a movie that failed badly. He was broke for 18 months and couldn't get any acting work. He became a car mechanic, fixing cars for people who had no idea he was once almost a movie star. Then luck stepped in. A studio executive brought his car in for repairs and was impressed by how hard Brolin worked. He offered him a chance to try out for acting again. That tryout led to the role that changed Brolin's life. He became Dr. Stephen Kiley on Marcus Welby, MD. The show started in 1969 and ran until 1976. In 1970, he won an Emmy Award. Then he won 2 Golden Globe Awards. In 1972, he took on a darker role in Skyjacked, playing a disturbed Vietnam War veteran. Then came Westworld in 1973, where he played a visitor in a theme park with robots. In 1979, Brolin took on horror in the Amityville Horror. In 1979, Brolin took on horror in the Amityville Horror, and that Brolin built a show that was just as scary and manly. The film became a huge success, earning over $80 million 0 cents. In 1985, he showed his funny side with a small part in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. At the same time, he starred in the TV show Hotel for 5 years, playing the manager of a fancy San Francisco hotel. Meanwhile, Barbra Streisand was born in Brooklyn on April 24, 1942. When Barbra was just 15 months old, her father died from a seizure. The family had only $250 0 cents in savings and had to move in with her grandparents. Barbra never got to know her father, but later found a note he had written in her baby book. I have a feeling this one is going to be special. Her stepfather was cold and once told her he'd break her spirit. By 1958, at just 16 years old, Barbra left home. She had nowhere to go and no money. For a year and a half, she stayed wherever she could, friends' couches, old cots, and even fire escapes in summer. She only earned $17, 0 cents a week, but made it last by visiting her mother twice a week, just in time for dinner, so she could eat without admitting she was homeless. By 1960, Barbra was working as an usher at a theater, making just over $46, 0 cents a week. She watched the same play, The Sound of Music, more than 100 times. One night, a stage manager heard her sing. She boldly said she was trying out for a part, even though she wasn't. On the spot, she sang for 3 casting directors. 2 days later, she was performing in a nightclub for $18.00 over the weekend. Up to that point, she had never had a voice lesson. She learned by singing in stairwells and subways. Then came the night everything changed. It was September 1960. Barbra, just 18, walked onto a nightclub stage in a $6.00 dress from a thrift shop. She had already been rejected from 7 tryouts that month, often told she was too strange-looking. One producer even told her she had a $1 million voice but a 5-cent face. But that night, she sang "Cry Me a River," and the crowd went silent, then they clapped for nearly 5 minutes. And so that night, she sang "Cry Me a River," and the crowd went silent, then they clapped for nearly 5 minutes. She got perfect scores from the judges the first time it had ever happened. Within 2 months, she had 23 paid gigs. She had proved that talent didn't need to fit the usual idea of beauty. In 1961, she changed her name, dropping the second A to become Barbra. She kept her Brooklyn accent, refused surgery to change her looks, and kept singing the odd songs she liked. Then came Broadway in 1962. She played Miss Marmalstein in "I Can Get It For You Wholesale." Opening night, the crowd made her sing it 3 times. She was just a supporting actor, but the reviews only talked about her. In 1963, Barbra released her first album. Columbia Records thought it would fail, but it sold 150,000 copies in 1 month. That album won her a Grammy for Album of the Year. She beat Frank Sinatra. In her speech, she said, "This isn't luck. This is what happens when you don't listen to people who don't understand your vision." A year later, she played Fanny Brice in Funny Girl. She performed the role 867 times, missing only 2 shows. Even when she had pneumonia, she didn't stop. When the show moved to London, tickets were being sold on the black market for outrageous amounts. In 1965, she signed a TV deal with CBS worth $5 million for 10 specials. She was only 23, but the contract gave her complete control. Her first special broke every rule. She started the show singing "Alone in the Dark." 71% of people watching TV that night were tuned in. She won 5 Emmy Awards. In 1968, Barbra stepped into movie history with Funny Girl. The film became the top-grossing movie of the year. Barbra won the Academy Award for Best Actress. It was her very first movie. She tied with Katharine Hepburn, the only tie in that Oscar category ever. In 1972, she took a big risk with What's Up, Doc?, a wild comedy that became the 3rd biggest movie of the year. The following year, she starred opposite Robert Redford in The Way We Were. The title song became the biggest hit of 1974 and sold over 2 million copies. Barbra wanted more control over her work. In 1972, she started her own production company. Then came A Star is Born in 1976. The film's love song, Evergreen, became a massive success. Barbra made history as the first woman to win an Oscar for composing music. When she directed her first movie, Yentl, in 1983, it took her 15 years to get it made. 12 studios said no. She worked 20-hour days and proved everyone wrong. The movie made over $40 million, 0 cents. When Yentl got great reviews, the Golden Globes refused to nominate Barbra in the main directing category. Instead, they made up a one-time award just for her. Behind the spotlight, Barbra's personal life was often painful. She married actor Elliot Gould in 1963. Their son Jason was born in 1966. But the marriage suffered. Gould struggled with gambling and drug use. They divorced in 1971. James Brolin and Barbra Streisand met on a blind date on July 1st, 1996. Both were in their mid-50s and had been through failed relationships. Streisand had been divorced since 1971. Brolin had just ended his second marriage and was $1,400,000, 0 cents in debt. They ended up talking for 6 hours. In the first 30 seconds, Streisand asked him, "Who messed up your hair?" She didn't mean anything bad, but it hit Brolin hard. His ex-wife had never commented on his looks in 11 years. He almost walked out, but something in her eyes made him stay. That night ended at 3:27 a.m. with her asking for a lock of his hair. She kept it. It's now framed in their home. Later, she admitted that just 17 minutes after meeting him, she felt he was different from the 28 blind dates she'd been on. Brolin tried to propose 3 times. The first was 87 days after they met in a hot air balloon. He gave her a 3.9-carat diamond worth $250,000, 0 cents. She said no. She had a 2-year rule after a bad experience. The second proposal came on New Year's Eve, 1997. She said no again. The third time worked. It was March 15th, 1998, during a picnic at her Malibu home. He gave her a 24-page letter with 98 reasons they belonged together. They married exactly 2 years after their first date. On July 1, 1998, the wedding cost $1,400,000, 0 cents. There were 37 guards, a no-fly zone, and 15,000 white roses and orchids flown in from 4 countries. Guests included Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, and the Clintons. At the reception, Brolin gave a speech. He said, "Every night is a new adventure. Sleeping is a waste of time. I can't wait to see her again in the morning." He had battled insomnia for 27 years. She became his cure. John Travolta later said Brolin had kept a journal of every day they'd spent together, which he planned to give her on their 25th anniversary. They reached that milestone in 2023. From the start of their marriage, they kept separate bank accounts. It was Brolin's idea after losing $3 million, 0 cents, in his second divorce. Streisand was worth $400 million, 0 cents, and Brolin had $60 million, 0 cents, so this helped keep things equal. In a 2023 interview, Brolin said this setup saved them from money fights that ruined other Hollywood marriages. During the COVID-19 lockdown, their bond grew even stronger. While many couples split up, they fell in love all over again. They spent 425 nights in a row together. They woke up at 6:45 a.m., meditated, and made breakfast. They did 37 puzzles, one for each possible year of marriage. They watched The Crown and Bridgerton twice and acted out scenes in costume. They even wrote a 278-page journal during lockdown. Their $35,000 0 cent Swedish mattress became their headquarters, and they called it the boardroom. They made big career decisions from that bed. Streisand even wrote songs for her 2018 album while lying there. They spent 4 to 6 hours a day on that mattress. Their bedroom was soundproofed at a cost of $175,000, 0 cents. When they fought, they took walks. They followed strict rules, no phones, deep breaths every 30 steps, and they walked in opposite directions around their 3.2-acre estate. After 17 minutes, they returned and wrote journal entries about how they felt. They used this method at least 217 times. Streisand also stayed busy with her passion for women's heart health. She launched the Fight the Lady Killer campaign in 2014. She was shocked to learn heart disease kills more women than all cancers combined. She helped fund a heart center and pushed for more awareness. Her campaign helped lower the number of deaths from 1 in 3 women to 1 in 4. She also spent 10 years writing her memoir, My Name is Barbra. It came out in 2023 and was 970 pages long. She wrote it all by hand. Critics praised its honesty and style. Brolin joked that she probably wrote most of it in bed on their fancy mattress. As of 2025, Brolin is 83 and still working. He told People magazine, "I don't plan on stopping." He was filming Ransom Canyon and narrating the final season of Sweet Tooth. He joked that Streisand made fewer movies, but he made up for it with quantity, 97 films and 600 hours of TV. Ransom Canyon brought Brolin back to Westerns. He played a rancher named Cap Fuller who dies in episode 9. The show was Netflix's first major solar-powered production. Around the same time, Brolin finished narrating all 3 seasons of Sweet Tooth. He talked about his long history with horses and said directing was still his favorite, but acting kept him energized. But now everything has changed. The man who once couldn't sleep without pills until he found his true love is facing sleepless nights again, but for a very different reason. The couple who solved their problems by taking walks around their estate now walk with heavier hearts. The woman who fought every studio executive, every critic, and every person who said she couldn't make it is now fighting a battle that money and fame can't win. James Brolin, who wrote in his journal every single day about their love story, is now writing what might be the final chapters. After 27 years together, they're proving that real love isn't just about the good times, it's about holding each other through the hardest moments life can bring.